As I stood in the doorway, the weight of the world crashing down on my shoulders, I could hardly comprehend the betrayal that lay before me. My wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for years, was entwined in the arms of a man whose face was plastered across every magazine and television screen. The reality TV star, with his charming smile and insatiable ego, had stolen not just her heart, but my very sense of self. The moment was surreal. The living room, usually a sanctuary filled with laughter and warmth, felt like a frozen wasteland. I remember the way the afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows that seemed to mock me as I stood paralyzed, my heart racing. I had returned home early, expecting to surprise her with a spontaneous dinner, only to stumble upon the most devastating scene imaginable. I felt a rush of emotions, shock, anger, betrayal, all colliding within me like a violent storm. My throat tightened and I could hardly breathe as I took in the sight before me. They were wrapped around each other on the couch, oblivious to the world outside their bubble. Her laughter rang out, a sound I had cherished for years, now twisted into something grotesque. He flashed a grin that could charm anyone, but to me it was a grimace of triumph. It took every ounce of willpower not to scream, to lash out, to confront them right then and there. Instead, I turned on my heel and stumbled back out the door, the echo of their laughter chasing me into the night. I drove aimlessly through the streets, my mind racing with thoughts of how I could have been so blind. Hadn't I noticed the late nights, the hushed phone calls? I felt like a fool, a man betrayed by the one person I thought I could trust above all. As I drove, the anger simmered beneath the surface, boiling over into something darker. I couldn't allow this man, this interloper, to continue to bask in the limelight while I wallowed in the shadows of his betrayal. A fire ignited within me, a burning desire for retribution. I would ensure that his fame ended overnight, and I would do it with a precision that would leave no room for doubt. But who was I kidding? I was just an ordinary man, a husband who had been wronged. I didn't have the resources or connections that a reality TV star possessed. But as I sat in my car, staring blankly at the road ahead, I realized that this was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my sense of self that had been ripped away. I returned home, my mind racing with thoughts of how to set my plan into motion. I needed to gather evidence, expose his secrets, and watch as the world turned against him. The thought of it sent a thrill through me, but beneath that thrill was a gnawing dread. What would it take to bring him down? Would this act of vengeance truly heal the wounds of betrayal, or would it only deepen the chasm between my wife and me? As I plotted my revenge, I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and dread. I was stepping into a world of intrigue and manipulation, a game that would require cunning and patience. I would need to learn everything I could about this man who had invaded my life. I would study his public persona, his weaknesses, and those who surrounded him. The reality star had built his fame on a foundation of superficiality, but even the most glamorous facades have cracks. I would find those cracks and exploit them. I would watch his every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But as I delved deeper into my plan, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing a part of myself in the process. With each step I took, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. The line between right and wrong blurred, and I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. As I began to gather information, I felt a sense of purpose. This was my chance to take control of my life again, to turn the tables on the man who had so carelessly destroyed my world. And so, my journey of revenge began, fueled by pain and betrayal, but also by a desperate need to reclaim what was rightfully mine. In the days that followed my discovery, I found myself consumed by thoughts of my wife and her affair with the reality TV star, Ryan Steele. I had always known her to be passionate and vivacious, but I never imagined she would be drawn to someone like him, a man who thrived on attention and drama. Ryan was everything I wasn't. He was flashy, charming, and lived in a world filled with glitz and glamour. People adored him, and truthfully, I had never understood why. My wife Lisa was a vibrant woman with an infectious laugh and a heart of gold. We had built a life together, filled with shared dreams and laughter. We had traveled, celebrated milestones, and supported each other through thick and thin. But now I was left questioning everything. What had I done wrong? What had led her to seek validation in the arms of a man whose fame was built on a reality show? As I reflected on our relationship, I began to piece together the moments that had led to this betrayal. Lisa had always been drawn to excitement. Perhaps it was that thrill of the unknown that lured her to Ryan. Their worlds collided at a charity event I had attended with her, where Ryan was the star attraction. I had brushed off her fascination with him as harmless admiration, but now it felt like a cruel joke. I recalled the way she would light up when discussing the latest episode of his show, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. I should have recognized the signs, the late-night texts, the secretive phone calls, the way she would often distance herself from me. I had been so caught up in my work, prioritizing my career over nurturing our marriage, that I had failed to see the cracks forming. But I refused to wallow in self-pity. Instead, I decided to learn about Ryan, the man who had stolen my wife's affection. I began to watch his show, immersed in the drama and superficiality that surrounded him. He was a master manipulator, weaving his charm to captivate audiences and friends alike. I found myself analyzing every episode, searching for weaknesses, inconsistencies, or any dirt that I could exploit. I reached out to a few contacts I had made through my job in marketing. They had connections in the media and entertainment industry, people who thrived on gossip and scandal. I explained my situation without revealing too much. I didn't need their sympathy, just their assistance. I wanted to know everything there was to know about Ryan Steele, the good, the bad, and the ugly. As the days turned into weeks, I meticulously gathered information. I discovered that Ryan had a reputation for being a womanizer, a fact that was often glossed over in the media. There were whispers of affairs, broken relationships, and even a few public scandals that had been swept under the rug. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anger as I unearthed these details. This man was not just a charming star. He was a fraud, hiding behind a facade of fame. I also learned about his past relationships, how they had ended bitterly, often with accusations of betrayal. It seemed that Ryan had a pattern, one that I could exploit. I began to formulate my plan, carefully considering each step. My goal was not just to expose him, but to ensure that his downfall was public and brutal. I wanted to watch as his carefully constructed world crumbled before my eyes. As I plotted my revenge, I couldn't help but think about Lisa. Would exposing Ryan's secrets bring her back to me, or would it only push her further away? I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to confront her about her betrayal, but I knew that would only complicate matters. I needed to stay focused on my plan. I started to contact individuals who had previously worked with Ryan, people who might have insights into his character. I remembered a former assistant of his who had left under less than pleasant circumstances. If I could get her to speak out, it could be the catalyst I needed to begin the public unraveling of Ryan Steele. With each passing day, I felt more determined. The pain of betrayal fueled my desire for revenge, but I also felt a growing sense of unease. Was I becoming the very thing I despised? A man driven by spite and anger. I tried to push those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the thrill of the hunt. I was entering a dangerous game, and there was no turning back. As I set my plan into motion, I felt a sense of empowerment that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I was no longer the victim. I was the one in control, and I intended to make Ryan Steele pay for what he had done. As I delved deeper into my plan, the intricacies of revenge began to unfold before me like a dark tapestry. I had already gathered a wealth of information about Ryan Steele, but now it was time to refine my strategy and ensure that I executed it flawlessly. I needed to be methodical, to think several steps ahead, and to anticipate any countermoves he might make. My first target was Sarah, Ryan's former assistant. I had learned that she had left his employ after a very public fallout, and whispers of mistreatment had followed her exit. I reached out to her, presenting myself as a concerned party who had heard about her experiences with Ryan. After a few conversations, I managed to earn her trust. It turned out that she had a treasure trove of stories, tales of his arrogance, his manipulative behavior, and the way he treated the people around him like pawns in his game. One evening, we met at a dimly lit cafe, and I could see the pain in her eyes as she recounted her time with him. "He's not who he appears to be," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "He's charming, sure, but it's all an act. Behind closed doors, he's ruthless and selfish. I watched him use people and throw them away like they were nothing." It was exactly the kind of information I needed. As she spoke, I took careful notes, mentally cataloging each detail. I could already envision how I would use her testimony to paint Ryan as the monster he really was. I also made sure to keep her comfortable, assuring her that I had no intention of putting her in harm's way. My goal was to expose Ryan, not to drag her back into the chaos of his world. After our meeting, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I was on the right path, and the pieces were starting to come together. I began to draft a comprehensive plan that would unveil Ryan's true nature to the public. I would gather testimonials from Sarah and others who had suffered at his hands and present them to a journalist I knew who thrived on scandal. The media would eat it up. Ryan's reputation could be shattered in an instant. As I worked on this, my thoughts would often drift back to Lisa. I was torn between my desire for revenge and the remnants of love I still felt for her. I wanted to confront her, to make her see the truth about Ryan, but I knew that doing so would reveal my hand. I had to stay focused. I spent countless nights plotting and strategizing, often losing sleep as my mind raced with possibilities. I learned how to navigate the world of gossip and media, studying how scandals unfolded and how public figures fell from grace. I even reached out to a few former colleagues who had connections in the entertainment industry, asking them to keep an ear to the ground for any rumors about Ryan. The more I learned, the more I realized that Ryan had a fragile hold on his fame. The public adored him, but it was a fickle love, easily swayed by new scandals or revelations. I had to strike while the iron was hot, and I felt the pressure mounting as I prepared to launch my plan. I decided that the best time to release the information would be during a major event, perhaps a charity gala where Ryan would be in attendance, basking in the glow of his celebrity status. I could already imagine the headlines: "Reality star's dark side exposed." The thought sent chills down my spine. I reached out to Sarah again, asking her if she would be willing to go public with her story. After some hesitation, she agreed, motivated by the desire to expose Ryan's true character. We crafted a timeline of events, ensuring that every detail was accurate and compelling. I felt a sense of camaraderie with her, united by a shared goal of bringing down the man who had hurt both of us in different ways. As the event approached, I made sure to keep my distance from Lisa. I didn't want her to suspect anything, and I needed her to remain in the dark about my plans. However, I could see the strain in our relationship. The laughter that once filled our home was replaced by a heavy silence. I felt like a ghost in my own life, moving through the motions but never fully present. The night of the gala arrived, and I found myself packing in my apartment, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had arranged for Sarah to be interviewed by the journalist I had contacted, and I knew that once the story broke, there would be no turning back. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my purpose. This was about more than just revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and forcing Lisa to confront the reality of her choices. As I prepared to watch the event unfold from a distance, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Would this be the moment I had been waiting for? Would the truth finally come to light? I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. The night of the gala was electric, a swirl of lights and laughter that felt both surreal and ominous. I had secured a vantage point across the street from the venue, hidden in the shadows, where I could observe everything without drawing attention to myself. The red carpet was a sea of flashing cameras and eager fans, all clamoring for a glimpse of the stars as they arrived. Among them was Ryan Steele, dressed in a tailored suit that accentuated his physique, flashing his trademark grin as he posed for photos. I felt a surge of anger at the sight of him, that arrogant smile plastered across his face, oblivious to the storm that was about to descend upon him. I pulled my phone from my pocket, checking the time. Sarah was supposed to meet the journalist inside shortly after Ryan arrived, and I needed to be ready for the fallout. As the minutes ticked by, I watched the glamorous chaos unfold. Lisa arrived, radiant in a stunning gown, her laughter ringing out like a bell. I felt a pang of longing mixed with resentment. She looked beautiful, but it was the kind of beauty that felt distant, almost foreign. I had loved her fiercely, but now all I could think about was the betrayal that had shattered everything we had built together. Finally, the moment arrived. I received a text from Sarah. "We're live." My heart raced as I leaned closer to the window, my eyes glued to the entrance of the gala. I could see Ryan laughing with a group of people, completely unaware of the impending storm. I imagined the moment when the truth would hit him, when he would realize that his carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. As the interview began, I watched intently, my breath catching in my throat. The journalist asked Sarah about her time working for Ryan, and she responded with a mixture of poise and vulnerability. "He's charming in public, but behind the scenes, he's a different person," she said, her voice steady. I witnessed firsthand how he treated people, like they were nothing more than tools for his success. With each word, I felt a sense of vindication. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the beginning of Ryan's downfall. I could see the headlines forming in my mind. "Reality star exposed, a history of abuse and manipulation." The thought made my heart race, but I also felt a twinge of guilt. Was I really doing the right thing? Was this revenge worth the potential fallout? As the interview continued, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere around Ryan. He had stopped laughing, and his smile faltered as whispers began to circulate among the crowd. The cameras caught the moment he learned that something was amiss. I could see the tension in his posture, the way his eyes darted around, searching for answers. And then it happened. The journalist made a bold move, revealing that Sarah had evidence, text messages, photos, and testimonies from others who had been wronged by Ryan. The room fell silent, the shock palpable. I could only imagine the swirl of emotions that must have been coursing through him: disbelief, anger, fear. I felt a rush of satisfaction as I watched him grapple with the realization that his life was about to change forever. The crowd buzzed with excitement, phones out, recording every moment as the scandal unfolded in real time. This was the power of the media, and I had orchestrated it all from the shadows. But as I watched, a part of me hesitated. I had set this in motion, but the consequences were far-reaching. Would Lisa be hurt by this? Would she realize the depth of her mistake? I had wanted her to see Ryan for who he truly was, but I never wanted to hurt her. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Sarah. "It's out there, he's panicking." I could almost hear the chaos erupting inside the gala. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I had come too far to back down now. As I stood there, I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and dread. I was the puppet master, pulling the strings from afar, but I was also aware of the potential fallout. Ryan's downfall would be swift and brutal, but what would that mean for my marriage? Would Lisa see me as a hero or as a man consumed by vengeance? I watched as Ryan stormed out of the gala, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. The cameras followed him, capturing every moment of his humiliation. I felt a thrill of victory, but also a weight in my chest. This was the moment I had orchestrated, but it was also the moment that would change everything. As he disappeared into the night, I knew the public would soon know the truth about Ryan Steele. But I also knew that my own life would never be the same. Revenge had a cost, and I was about to pay it. In the days that followed Ryan Steele's public downfall, the world erupted in a frenzy of gossip and speculation. News outlets were filled with headlines about the reality star's shocking betrayal and the allegations that had surfaced. Sarah's interview had gone viral, shared across social media platforms, and the fallout was swift. I watched in a mix of awe and dread as Ryan's carefully constructed persona crumbled before my eyes. The media painted him as a villain, and I felt a sense of satisfaction with each article that emerged detailing his past misdeeds. But as the dust settled, I found myself grappling with the consequences of my actions. I had achieved what I set out to do, but at what cost? Lisa had been uncharacteristically quiet since the gala. She had seen the news and the interviews, and her reaction was one of shock, disbelief, and anger. I could tell she was grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Part of her was furious with Ryan for betraying her, while another part was likely in denial about the reality of his character. I had hoped that this would force her to confront the truth, but it seemed to have only deepened the divide between us. One evening, after a long day of watching the media circus unfold, I returned home to find Lisa sitting on the couch, her face illuminated by the glow of the television. The news was playing and the anchor was discussing Ryan's latest statement, filled with defiance and denial. It was clear he was not going down without a fight. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the conversation I knew was coming. "You saw the news," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I can't believe you would do this," she replied, her voice shaking with anger. "You've ruined his life, you've ruined everything." Her words struck me like a blow. I had anticipated her reaction, but hearing it out loud felt like a punch to the gut. "He ruined our life, Lisa. He took what was ours and laughed about it," I countered, my voice rising. "You were with him. You were the one who betrayed me." She shot me a look of disbelief, her eyes filled with hurt. "I didn't think it was serious. I thought it was just a fling. You don't understand what it was like. I was confused. I was lonely." "Lonely," I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You had me. We had a life together. You chose him over everything we built." Tears welled in her eyes, and I felt a pang of guilt. I had wanted her to see the truth about Ryan, but I hadn't considered the impact it would have on her. "I wanted you to see who he really was," I said, my voice softer now. "But I never wanted to hurt you in the process." The room fell silent as we both processed the weight of our words. I could see the conflict in her eyes, a mixture of anger, betrayal, and perhaps a flicker of understanding. "You think this is over?" she finally said, her voice trembling. "Ryan won't just disappear. He'll fight back. He'll try to destroy you too." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had anticipated the backlash, but hearing it from her made it all the more real. "I'm not afraid of him," I replied, trying to sound resolute. "I've taken control of my life back. I won't let him continue to hurt anyone." But as the days turned into weeks, the reality of our situation began to sink in. Ryan was indeed fighting back. He hired a team of lawyers, and the media frenzy morphed into a legal battle that drew in everyone who had ever crossed paths with him, including Sarah. I watched in horror as the very people I had hoped would support the truth were dragged into the chaos, their lives turned upside down by Ryan's retaliatory tactics. Lisa and I found ourselves on opposite sides of a battlefield, caught in the crossfire of a war we hadn't intended to wage. I could see the toll it was taking on her. She was stressed, anxious, and torn between loyalty to her former lover and the reality of her choices. One night, as we sat in silence, I felt the weight of our disconnect. "I didn't want this for us," I said, my voice breaking. "I wanted to protect our marriage, to rebuild what was broken." She looked at me, her expression softening. "I know. But how can we move forward when everything feels so broken? I don't even know who I am anymore." Her words resonated deeply within me. We were both lost in the aftermath of betrayal, struggling to find our way back to each other. But as the legal battle escalated, I realized that the path to healing wouldn't be easy. I had set this revenge in motion, but now I was faced with the reality that it might cost me the woman I loved. I began to question my motivations. Was I truly seeking justice, or had I become consumed by vengeance? Each day felt like a new struggle, and I was left wondering if I could ever reclaim the life we once had. As the courtroom battles raged on, I felt the walls closing in. I had fought to expose Ryan, but now I was starting to see the damage it had done to my own life. I had wanted to reclaim my dignity, but instead, I was losing everything that mattered. The climax of this war was approaching, and I knew I had to make a choice. Would I continue down this path of destruction, or could I find a way to salvage what was left of my marriage? The answer loomed over me like a dark cloud, and I felt the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. As the courtroom drama unfolded, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The tension between Lisa and me had reached a boiling point, and it was clear that the consequences of my actions were rippling through every aspect of our lives. I had sought revenge against Ryan Steele, and in the process, I had nearly lost my wife. The legal battles were relentless. Ryan's team was powerful, and they weren't afraid to play dirty. They painted me as a vindictive husband, man so consumed by jealousy that he would stop at nothing to destroy his wife's lover. I watched as the narrative twisted, the media spinning tales that made me seem like the villain in this story. Each headline felt like a dagger, deepening the wounds I had inflicted upon myself. Despite the turmoil, Lisa and I had begun to have honest conversations about our relationship. In the quiet moments when the chaos subsided, we would sit together and reflect on what had gone wrong. "I never wanted to hurt you," I confessed one evening, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to protect what we had." She looked at me, her eyes filled with sadness. "But did you ever think about what this would do to us? I made a mistake, but I didn't expect you to become someone I didn't recognize. This revenge, it's consuming you." Her words struck a chord. I had become so focused on my quest for retribution that I had lost sight of the love we once shared. I was blinded by anger, and in doing so, I had pushed her further away. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have prepared me for the sight of Ryan in the courtroom. He walked in with an air of confidence, as if he were still the untouchable star everyone adored. I could see the smirk on his face, and it ignited a fire within me. But as the proceedings began, I realized that this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about us, Lisa and me. I had to make a choice: continue down this path of destruction or find a way to heal. When it was my turn to speak, I felt the room tense. "I'm not here to destroy anyone," I began, my voice steady. "I wanted to expose the truth, but I've come to realize that the truth isn't just about Ryan. It's about the choices we make and the people we hurt along the way." I glanced at Lisa, who was watching me with a mixture of hope and fear. "I want to reclaim my life, not through revenge but through honesty and accountability. I made mistakes too, and I want to own up to them." The room fell silent. I could see the surprise in the eyes of the judge and the onlookers. I had taken a risk, stepping away from the rage that had consumed me. I was no longer seeking to destroy Ryan. I was seeking to rebuild. As the hearing continued, I found myself speaking not just for myself, but for Lisa and the love we had shared. I shared our story, how we had drifted apart, how I had failed to see her needs, and how her choices had led us here. I spoke openly about the pain, the betrayal, and the hope that remained buried beneath the rubble. When the session concluded, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had laid bare my soul, and in doing so, I had taken the first step toward healing. The judge's decision would come later, but I knew that I had made the right choice. In the days that followed, the media continued to cover the fallout, but the narrative was shifting. Instead of focusing solely on the scandal, they began to highlight the complexities of relationships and the importance of communication. I had inadvertently turned the tide, and I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. As for Lisa and me, we began to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't easy. We had a long way to go, and trust was not something that could be restored overnight. But we started to have honest conversations, exploring our feelings and fears. I learned to listen, to understand her perspective, and she began to open up about her insecurities. Ryan's downfall continued, but I found myself less invested in his fate. I realized that my quest for revenge had only led to more pain and heartbreak. Instead, I chose to focus on the life I wanted to rebuild with Lisa. In the end, the experience taught me about the fragility of love and trust. I had journeyed through anger and vengeance, but I emerged with a deeper understanding of what it meant to truly love someone. I had learned that revenge might bring temporary satisfaction, but healing and forgiveness were what would ultimately lead to growth. As we moved forward, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Our marriage was not perfect, but it was ours, and we were committed to making it work. Together, we would navigate the complexities of our relationship and build a future based on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. And as for Ryan Steele, he became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the consequences of choices made in the heat of the moment. I had made my choice, and now it was time to live with it, focusing on the love that remained rather than the pain that had once consumed me. The darkness had lifted, and I was ready to embrace the light.